This is Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast where we bring Jesus into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey guys, welcome to Sports Spectrum. I am Jason Romano, and my email address is jason@sportspectrum.com. jason@sportspectrum.com. That gives you an opportunity to email us with whatever you're thinking about. Maybe you have a guest idea for Sports Spectrum. Maybe you have just some comments on today's show with Mark Herzlich, which is a powerful conversation of overcoming and trusting in God. Maybe you just want to say hello. That's why I give you my email address. You can email me directly, jason@sportspectrum.com. And we are presented today by Ronald Blue Trust. They're advisors applying biblical wisdom and technical expertise to help clients make wise financial decisions and experience clarity and confidence and leave a lasting legacy. We all have questions about our financial future, especially in the midst of a pandemic. Well, Ronald Blue Trust has the answers to your questions. You can trust them, we trust them, and you can reach out to them right now by going to the website ronblue.com. ronblue.com. As I mentioned earlier, I'm very excited to welcome Mark Herzlich, the former NFL linebacker Super Bowl champion with the New York Giants, joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. You probably remember the name Mark Herzlich, and if you're a football fan, you certainly remember his battle with Ewing's sarcoma, a rare form of bone cancer, in which he overcame and earned numerous honors for his courage and outreach. He won the Disney Spirit Award, the ACC Commissioner's Cup, 2011 ESPY winner for Best Comeback Athlete. Coming back from cancer was a huge deal, obviously, for Mark, and it was documented everywhere. But his journey goes even deeper than that. And Mark had a really good career at Boston College prior to his cancer diagnosis and was the 2008 ACC Defensive Player of the Year, First-Team All-ACC 2008, First-Team All-American in 2008. And then after overcoming cancer, his dreams of becoming an NFL player take place. He gets overlooked in the 2011 NFL draft, undrafted out of Boston College, signs with the Giants, and then goes on to play 7 seasons with the New York Giants, including a Super Bowl championship in his rookie year of 2011. Mark's journey of faith is also a pretty powerful one. We get into that, and then we get into the story of Mark's wife, Danielle, as well. There's a lot going on in this interview, and it's all good, and I think you guys will be really encouraged to hear the story of Mark Herzlich. He joins us here today on Sports Spectrum. I'm really excited to kind of dive into your story, and a lot of people know parts of your story, maybe not the entire story. So let's go back a little bit. You were born in Missouri, but graduated high school and went to high school in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah. Yep. So my dad worked for Ralston Purina, which is based out of St. Louis, and so I was born in St. Louis, lived there till I was about 4, and then he was transferred to the Philadelphia area, and so we moved to Wayne, Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia when I was 4, and grew up there my entire high school career. And it was the childhood is, I mean, what you would want to picture, right? You're doing sports every day. On the weekends, mom and dad are both there. Dad comes home from work and is there with you at dinner. I mean, it was a very nice upbringing. And yeah, so that was the extent of it. I had a younger brother, Brad, who's 4 years younger than me, and we were best friends all growing up. And then I have an adopted brother, Leroy, as well, who was one of my close friends all through high school, and his grandmother was his main caretaker, and she passed away. And so Leroy came and lived with us. So, and I consider my brother. So it was kind of the 3 of us and my parents and mishmash of other friends and cousins who kept coming in and out the door. Door was always open.
Were you a big Eagles fan, I presume, growing up?
So it's interesting. I was not a huge sports fan. I was a big fan of playing sports, but I don't know whether I didn't have the patience or whatever, but I couldn't sit inside, on a fall day and watch football. I wanted to go out and play in the backyard. So as I got to high school and more of my friends were Eagles fans, and Dominic McNabb was leading them to NFC Championship games, I became an Eagles fan, which was fantastic because my dad was a diehard Giants fan. So we had some rivalries in the house.
Sounds like my house. I'm a Cowboys fan. My brother's an Eagles fan. My dad's a Giants fan. So that's just kind of how we rolled with it, right?
Yeah, and it's fun that way. It's much more fun to root against each other than to root with each other. When you're sitting on the
Although I
couch.
do get jealous, Mark, because, and I said this to my brother, my nephew is in high school, junior, probably going to get some offers. We'll see if he gets on what level he gets as a quarterback in high school. But I was really hoping that he goes to a school and plays college ball so we can all root for the same team, which I'm
Yeah.
sure your family were all BC fans because you went to Boston College because of the NFL and the way that our family, and sounds like yours too, is broken up and none of us root for the same team.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And you think it's especially when, big time college football or big time college basketball, I've seen my friends, but like, you adopt people into basically, my parents became pseudo alumni of Boston College. That they're rocking Boston College gear rather than Wesleyan gear where they went to college. And, that's what all their stuff is. So, they just become kind of like I guess a pseudo alumni, and it's great because then, and it's funny too, because I became like a huge Boston College fan from going there, right? And afterwards, and you see it when you get to the league, guys aren't like diehard anything like any pro team fans in football because you can't be, because you change jobs and you change who pays for you just change.
Sure.
But you're like diehard your college, so you're going to be following your college closely, and that's where the friendly wagers come into play when you're in the locker room, for sure.
Absolutely. I want to talk to you about your faith in a little bit and your journey of faith, but let's go to 17-year-old Mark, high school, getting ready to go to BC. I want you to rank these three things in Mark Herzlich's life when he was 17: family, faith, and football. Rank them for me.
Yeah, I would say it would be family, then football, and then faith. My family we were always very close, and I loved them to death. And I remember when I was just deciding on whether I was going to college, like I don't think I even looked at anywhere on the West Coast or too far away. I knew I wanted to be kind of northeast where my family was, so they could come to games and they could be a part of it. And then I think football. I quite honestly, growing up, I grew up in a Presbyterian church, and once I got confirmed and my parents let me decide whether I could go to church or not, Sundays were for football. I would be playing and then I'd be watching some. So it was, my faith was non-existent at that point in my life.
Let's go through your journey a little bit to Boston College. You get to Boston College and you have a lot of success early on. You're the 2008 ACC Defensive Player of the Year, but you also had a very public battle with cancer. So I want to talk about that, and maybe you can weave in how faith shaped you in the mold of that. Maybe it comes after. I really don't know your faith journey, which I'm excited to hear. But let's talk about initially getting that cancer diagnosis and just some thoughts and emotions. I mean, you're 21 at the time that you find this out?
Yeah, so 21 when I found out, and I think it's funny that you make the assumption that faith comes into play when this like huge devastating thing hits, but like obviously, I think whenever you talk about how someone's gotten through something amazing, like there's always some sort of prayer somewhere like lined in their comeback story. And so there was definitely one of mine too, and I'll get to that. But so we just finished my junior season at Boston College. Was named ACC Defensive Player of the Year. Was on the finalist for the Lott Trophy and the Butt Kiss Award, and was debating whether I was going to leave after my junior year to go to the NFL draft. And I remember sitting down, and so Mike Mayock, who was working for ESPN at the time, he lived in the town that I was from, outside of Philadelphia, and my dad knew him. And basically we had breakfast one morning, and just I wanted to ask him, like, what do you think about this draft prospect? What do you think about coming out? And he just basically said, let's look at the draft board, see what other linebackers are coming out, see what would happen if you come out. In your mind, what would happen if you stayed, and be conservative about it. And so there were a lot of good linebackers and Ray Malaluga and Brian Cushing and this, pretty good draft class. And I decided, okay, I'm going to stay. I'm going to get my degree, go back to Boston College. And kind of right after I made that decision, I was home in Wayne, Pennsylvania, and my mom and I were competitive against each other. She's a 3-sport All-American in college at Wesleyan for lacrosse, field hockey, and squash. And so we were playing squash at home, and I just felt this pain in my leg. And she said, why don't you sit down and, rest it? And I competitively didn't want to, but she forced me to. And so I sat and then rested. It got a little better. And then I go back up to Boston College after the week of being at home. And I remember lining up for my first workout, and it was 8 40-yard dashes, at like 3/4 speed. So I do the first couple and I'm okay. And I push off on my left leg on the third rep, and I could barely move. And that sharp pain came back to my leg. And so as this pain grew and I kept going to the trainers and they couldn't really figure out or tell me what was wrong, I would go to chiropractors. I had this was winter in Boston, and, just a little kind of fun story. I had a moped. So, I would ride around school, the campus
Nice.
on a moped. And so I needed to go to the chiropractor because like my leg was messed up. So I took my moped and like a down parka jacket, and I would drive like 25 minutes away to Canton, Mass, and go see a chiropractor and drive back. And just like this entire winter went by, and this pain just kept growing and growing and growing. And I remember this one night in particular where I just finished like a pool workout when the rest of my team was on the field practicing, and I went to class and couldn't sit in class because my pain was so bad. And I get back to my room and I can't sleep, and I just called my dad on the phone, and I was crying. I mean, I was in tears because not only did the pain hurt so bad, but it was like this mental anguish of not having any idea what was wrong with me or any prospect of how to fix it. And it was this like fear of what was there or not there. And I broke down. I said, Dad, I don't know what to do. Like I can't fix this. And, my dad gave me some great wisdom. He said, that credit card I gave you for emergencies, like the old cowboys used to go and drink whiskey until their pain went away. Like, take that, go to the bar, drink some whiskey and feel better. And so I did that, and I felt great until the next day. Then I felt 6 times worse. And at that point, that next day I called and I was just like, look, this is the real deal. And Mom, I need you to set up doctor's appointments. And so set up doctor's appointments for me after that semester. Went probably to 6 different doctors, got EKGs, MRIs, CAT scans. And I'm sitting in my living room and got a call from one doctor, and he says, Mark, we got your MRI results back. Are you with your parents? And I said, yeah, I'm with my parents. He said, we sent them down to Pennsylvania Oncology Department. You and your parents should get in the car right now. You have an appointment in half an hour. So gosh, man, I turned to my dad and I said, Dad, like they said, we need to go to the oncology department. And my dad, to his credit, stayed pretty calm and said, let's just see kind of what happens. Let's go down there. And so we get in the car and we drive down, and we're sitting there in the doctor's office, and 4 doctors walk in, and as one doctor's putting the images up on the light board, another doctor walks towards me, and he says, Mark, I know it's going to be hard to hear, but as you can see in this image, there's a large white part on your left leg. That white part is a tumor. We're sorry to say, but you have a large tumor in your left femur, and we're about 95% sure that it's cancer. And gosh, man, I didn't know much about cancer. I'd seen movies, like I'd seen Brian's Song,
Yeah.
and one of my friends' moms had died of it when we were in high school. But like other than that, I didn't know anything about it. And it was scary. And I remember this like feeling of falling back off my chair. That I think everybody has done it in middle school, wherever they lean back and you feel like you're falling and you catch yourself, and there's just no catching. And I remember the first thing I heard after that was my dad asking the doctor, said, Mark is a very good football player. Like, when will he be able to play football again? My mom, reached over and smacked my dad in the chest. It's like my dad's name is Sandy. She goes, Sandy, what are you thinking about football for? It's
right. It's
like your son just got told you cancer. Like, why are you talking about football? But for me, like, that was just, I wanted to know when I could play football again. And I think that, that point in my life, I identified myself as a football player. Like, I would introduce myself like, yeah, Mark Herzlich, I play football at Boston College. Like, I have a brother, two brothers, and I'm from Wayne, Pennsylvania. And, you think about like the things you identify yourself with, like the only thing that I would share to people that I chose myself was the football thing. Everything else, like, was given to me by my parents. I didn't make those choices. So anyways, the doctor turned to my dad and said, Mr. Herzlich, I'm sorry, Mark will never play football again. If everything goes okay, which like translates to if he lives, which there was about a 10% chance of survival at that point. If he lives, there'll be so much damage to his leg that he'll have to walk with a cane for the rest of his life. Well, that shook the house. And got in the car, like, went back home, just like sat in my room. And I remember like feeling really bad for myself, like this, like self-pity almost. And I remember being like, why did this happen to me? Like, what I must have done something, right? Like, I didn't have a lot of faith or anything, but like, I was like, this was out of my control, and I must have done something to deserve this. And so a couple hours went by, and then I made a decision. I basically decided, like, look, I've never felt like this before, but anytime I've had to do something, I've just done it and like worked my tail off to try to do it. And that's what I'm going to do now. So I walked downstairs and I told my dad, who was sitting at the kitchen counter, I said, Dad, I'm going to be okay, and I'm going to play football again. And he just walked over to me and he hugged me and he said, let's do this. And it was like, all right, like, now I'm not alone in this. Like, we're going to do this, and you believe in me. So that's the beginning of the process. And we searched out doctors and searched out, the right practitioners and the right treatment plan. And as we are about to go into my first chemotherapy appointment, I got a call from this random number in Louisiana. And so I picked up, and this announcement had been on ESPN, so people had heard about my diagnosis. And so this was just kind of a random number, and I didn't usually pick up. But the guy said, hey, my name is Walter Musgrove. And I didn't know who that was. He said, my name is Walter, and I heard your story. I was diagnosed with cancer. I would like to just tell you my story. So I just listened. And he said how he was a football player, and he was running down on kickoff right before the last game, and he broke his collarbone. And he was so mad and just said, why did this happen right before the championship game? Well, they do an MRI of his collarbone and find a large tumor in his chest. And he told me, he said, I don't know why this happened to me. I don't know why this tumor happened to me, but I think that I probably broke my collarbone so I could find the tumor. And I think God was looking out for me. And I said, okay. And he said, do you pray? And I said, I don't really pray. He goes, you should pray. He said, pray, and pray specifically. And so I listened to him, and he said, I was so scared of losing my hair. I didn't want to lose my hair. And the doctors told me that I would lose my hair. And I prayed every single morning and every single night and all day long that I wouldn't lose my hair and that I'd be healthy again. And he said, and we're 2 years later, I'm back playing football. I didn't lose a strand of hair the entire time, and I'm healthy. So I hung up the phone and I was like, dear God, I don't know if you remember me, but my name's Mark. Like, I want to be healthy again, and I want to play football again. Like, the end. Sincerely,
Yeah.
Mark. Right.
Right.
And so like that became my prayer, like every morning and every night, and it was like a habit almost at the beginning, and like a routine. And it's funny because it you didn't feel like, maybe is it working? I don't know. Is it not working? I don't know. Like, what is this whole prayer thing about? And then one day I felt like it became too much for me to carry, like this entire thing that I was holding. And I felt like I needed to be strong for myself. I felt like I needed to, be stoic for my parents so they didn't see how upset I was or how scared I was. I felt like I needed to be strong for my teammates back at BC or for anyone who was following my story. And I remember one day just being like, breaking down again and just crying in my room by myself, being like, I can't do this anymore. And I said, God, I read in the Bible one time that like you'll take all my worries off me, my anxiety off me. Like, please, I can't do it anymore. And I immediately felt this weight off my shoulders of like, I got you. And from that moment on, I said, this dude is real. Like, he's got my back. I don't know everything about him or not, but I've got to learn. And that was really the start of my faith journey. So I go through my treatment process, and I do 7 months of chemotherapy with 50 cycles of radiation. I get a titanium rod drilled through the center of my femur. And after the 7 months of treatments, I'm sitting in my hospital bed after the surgery, and the doctor walks in, and I'm like half on morphine, but just like trying to pay attention. He goes, Mark, there was no cancer left in the bone. The hardest part about it was that I could barely get the drill bit through your bone, which like is kind of nasty talking about now, but it was like I had strong bones still. Like, I was able to go. And then he said, and whenever you feel like you can go, you can start running again. And I said, what about football? He said, let pain be your guide. And I dropped my crutches the moment I got home, never got them back, just walked, and then ran, and then came back. And on September 4th of 2010, I was able to run back out in the field and play for Boston College again after this insane battle. And I think the best part about it was that, I truly found out that there was something more important than football, right? There was not only just health, but like I found a relationship with God during that terrible time, and the knowledge that I couldn't rely on myself for something, and I could rely on Him for it, which it doesn't happen often. Like, usually you can feel like you can just fight through things or struggle through things or tough them out, but like certain things hit you in life where you're just like, I cannot do this by myself. And He was there for me.
We'll get back to our conversation with Mark Herzlich in just a little bit, but want to tell you some more about our friends at Ronald Blue Trust. 35 years of experience in serving people in the world of finances, specifically pro athletes and coaches. They have worked with these professional athletes, creating a specific service offering tailored to meet their unique needs, but they can also meet your unique needs with Ronald Blue Trust. Their advisors applying biblical wisdom and technical expertise, helping their clients make wise financial decisions to experience clarity and confidence and leave a lasting legacy. They primarily work with individuals and families across the U.S. who are beyond the debt problem stage, but want to be good stewards of their wealth. And 2020 has brought a lot of questions, especially financially, for all of us, including myself. And I know the first person that I'm going to go to with those questions is Ronald Blue Trust, because it's in the name. They are trustworthy. We trust them. Ronald Blue Trust. You can trust them as well. Check them out at their website, ronblue.com, for all your questions, your financial concerns, and your financial needs. Check them out at ronblue.com. Let's get back to our conversation with Mark Herzlich, now on Sports Spectrum. I'm curious, too, because you mentioned identity and being identified not only as a football player, but for many years, maybe even still today, you're identified as Mark Herzlich, cancer survivor, the guy who went through cancer. But did you ever just feel like, man, I just don't want to talk about that right now. I just want to kind of focus on maybe the NFL, because the spoiler alert here is you got to the NFL and you got to play for 7 years with the Giants. But did you ever get tired of just kind of hearing about it or talking about it?
The only time I was tired of hearing about it was when, like, and this sounds so ungrateful, I get it, but like when I would win awards for like my battle and my courage, and I was sitting next to guys who would win awards for football, and that was like at a certain point, I was like, I want to be back to where I was football wise.
Right.
And like there was definitely a sense of jealousy that would seep in. And it would be like, which is such a shame too, right? Like, because, I'd remind myself, like, I have this ridiculous blessing to be able to just be alive and continue. And then there was a while where I was like, man, I want to be back on that All-American team. Gosh, man, like, why wasn't I be a first round pick again?
Yeah. And
I think it was really funny because after my first year in the NFL, I was at a charity event at Tom Coughlin's charity event, and raises money for kids with pediatric cancer called the J Fund. And this guy Ernie, who's the executive director of the J Fund, he came up to me, and this guy, I mean, he's a gem. He's got to be 5'3". Like, I mean, he's not tall. And he's like looking up at me and like grabs my hand, and he said, "God bless you, Mark." And he said, God kept you on this earth not to play football, but to help other people through your story.
Yeah.
And it was so weird because like from then on, I was like, I'll tell I don't care. Like, if I don't get recognized for football, like, it is what it is. Like, I can help share this story, and there's a purpose behind this performance that I'm able to do. I mean, I think that, we talk about performing in our sport, and like, you need to go out there and perform. But like, when you think about like a performance, like it's like a show, and it's a really good show, and it's a real meaningful show. But like, if you don't have a purpose behind that performance, like, how fulfilling does it actually become in your soul? And I love to encourage players, young players, old, whatever it is, to like just have a purpose behind it. And that purpose can be anything. It could be your family, it could be whatever it is. But when you find that purpose, then a lot of the worry behind being cut, it ending, or whatever kind of fades away, because you're living out what you're supposed to be doing.
And you come to the NFL and you win a Super Bowl in your first year. So that's a pretty good, start, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's a pretty good start. God, yeah, and that's the other part too. It's like, you get to the NFL, and just being in the NFL alone, like, creates this platform for yourself. You have a platform to be able to do whatever you want to do. And I think it's funny, this is kind of a tangent, but as athletes in general, whether it's fair or unfair, we are celebrities that everyone looks to as, you need to be a role model. I don't care if you want to be a role model, like, you have to be a role model. Like, rock stars, that's not the case. Like, no one's like, okay, like, they're in an unbelievable rock band, he needs to be a role model. Or like, singers or actors or whatever it is. Like, no one's like, you're required to be a role model. And if you're not, then you're going to shock me. Because like, that's what we are as athletes. So like,
Yeah.
when you have this platform, people are looking up to you regardless. And then, win a Super Bowl and get a ring and all that stuff. And then your platform gets even greater. So that's gone into a lot of our charity work that my wife and I are doing, and realizing that, not just my story, but her story too, which, I'd love to get into if you want to, is really shaped where we're driving.
Well, I want to get to her story in one sec, but one question I
Yeah.
really do want to ask you is how your faith in the Lord grew during your time as an NFL player.
Mm-hmm.
Walk me through that process, and maybe Danielle has a role in that, certainly, because you guys married, I believe, in 2015, so you were still a player in the NFL with the Giants. Walk us through how your faith in the Lord and your faith in Jesus grew during your playing career.
Yeah, so it's funny. I think they grew pretty much parallel for a lot of it, at least for the beginning, where I was growing in my faith over here, and I was growing in my football over here, and it wasn't until a little bit later where those two things kind of combined. But I think Danielle had a lot to do with that, and she grew up Catholic, and I did not grow up Catholic, but also knew I didn't want to be Catholic.
Yeah.
We knew that we wanted to be together, but we needed to kind of find our faith together. And when we moved to New Jersey to play for the Giants, we found this church called Hillsong, and Hillsong, New York was just starting up. And we got close with some of the pastors, and Carl Lentz became a good friend of ours. And I think it was really interesting. I saw a bunch of human examples of how to live in Jesus Christ, rather than just see a lot of hear a lot of human words about how to live in Jesus Christ. And so like this community was created aside from football, of this is what it looks like to walk with Christ. And I said, there were certain people that I would meet too in football. I'm like, there's something different about this dude. I think we always say this, there's something about this guy. I don't know what it is. And it's always Jesus. And so there was plenty of that as well with football. So as these things started to grow together, and I started to also learn more and read the Bible more and pray more and just get direction more, our Bible studies with our team started to grow as well. So, as I'm learning this stuff, in my personal life, and then am able to come back into, my NFL life, and not only just share what I've been seeing and witnessing and hearing from God, but also like everybody else's story and journey with God too. So, I think that the development was there and was excellent, and was necessary with all this. It's stressful, man. Like playing the NFL, it's like stressful, and I'm sure I never was like the guy who was like the big money guy or anything, but like I'm sure it's stressful for them too. Like I think people think just because they have a lot of money in their bank account that life's good or whatever, but things are stressful. So I definitely relied on God for that as well. So to kind of bring it all together, as my journey with Christ personally was developing, and then kind of my football career, and then just my involvement with people in the Christ community in football, it kind of all came together just being invited by a friend to go to PAO one year, and it was like such an amazing experience. And I had seen the worship already at Hillsong. We had that community aspect of it too, but just to be able to look around the room and see the other Christian men and women, and I think too, like how they loved each other, right? Not just husbands and wives, yes, but like the players, and then like how there was just like love in the room, made an impact on me. And then if you're like just early in your walk with Christ, and you hear Francis Chan speak, like, I mean, you're going to have some sort of conviction going on after. And I was like, really pretty much almost, I was like, I'm going to empty my bank accounts and give everything away. And like, I'm going to, sell my house and live in a cardboard box on the street. Like, It's done. It's decided. And then I had a good friend of mine who was there with me. He was like, pump the brakes just for a second. Let's like talk about this whole thing. So,
yeah.
So anyway, I think it was a very convicting moment. And then, I think the best part about it was I gained mentors there, other guys who, had walked the same life I had, sports wise, and had walked similar lives with coming to Christ. But people that I could call and having men to talk to about man problems, about Christ problems, about whatever problem, husband problems, dad problems, like that was epic. I mean, just like so important to me. And yeah, so like that development through leadership of others and following and, coming into my own in Christ, and Francis Chan beat me over the head, like all those things, culminated in really loving Christ.
Yeah, Francis Chan will do that to you, won't he, Mark? I mean, he's one of those guys when you listen to, that's about as convicting a person as you'll ever listen to, but he challenges us all in our faith, which I think is a good thing. You mentioned Danielle and her story, and I want to give you a chance to talk and brag on your wife a little bit and tell a little bit about her story.
Yeah. So first of all, Danielle is, I'd say it all the time, like she's my hero. She's like the strongest person I know. And I met her actually while I was sick. So I just finished, a whole week of chemotherapy, and it was a Halloween party. And my friends, which they're very good friends, they recommended a fantastic Halloween costume. They said, you're bald from chemo, so why don't you be Mr. Clean? And I made a mean Mr. Clean, I'll tell you that. So we went out to this Halloween party as Mr. Clean, and I met Danielle there, and got her number, and appropriately waited to like call her, because you can't just like act super desperate right away. So
right, you wanted to pursue this properly.
Right. So I waited like 35 minutes and called her. I called her like 2 or 3 times that night and no answer, but eventually she did pick up, and I was like, can I take you out to dinner? And she was like, oh, that'd be super sweet. And so I was like, let's meet at the cafeteria in 20 minutes. So it was not like your 5-star dining restaurant, but it did the trick, and we started dating. And we would like go on runs together and just like kind of almost be like bros together, which scared me a little bit because I liked her more than a bro. But I didn't know where she was at. And so one night though, she called me and was like, my roommates are out, do you want to come over and watch a movie? And I was like, yeah, I do. Like, that's code for you're not my bro anymore. Like, this is like, I might like you more than a bro. Yeah. So I go over to a room, and we're sitting on the couch, and she puts a movie on, and it's Monsters Inc., which then I'm like, I'm actually a bro. Like, we're bros now again.
Monsters Inc.'s a pretty great movie.
It's a great movie, but like I was hoping for like, a rom-com or like, scary movie so I could like cry or like hold her tight or something.
Not a Disney Pixar movie, right?
Yeah, no, but it was good. I pretended to be scared a little bit when, Mike, but anyway, but after the movie, we sat on the couch, and she said, I want to tell you something that I've never told anybody before. And I said, okay. And so she's told me about her childhood and growing up, and about her dad and how he was abusive, physically and emotionally and mentally abusive to her pretty much every day of her life. And, she told me about, different relationships she's had that, weren't great afterwards, and how she just didn't trust men really anymore.
Yeah. And
she turned to me after she was finished, and kind of heartbreakingly said, do you think any less of me? And I was like, I couldn't think any more of you. Like, you're amazing, and I'm so sorry that happened. And remember, I'm sitting there like bald, Like we talked about my identity was gone. Like I didn't know who I was as a man. I felt like everything that society told me a man should be was taken away from me. And I was sitting there listening to her finally feel safe enough to tell someone about what happened. I was like, this is what being a man is. Like this right here is what it means to be a man. And I left that night, and I just remember being so full in a time of my life that I felt like so weak. And we, continued to see each other, and and obviously ended up getting married. And she was with me throughout my entire battle and my entire comeback. And then I remember we went to a charity gala when I was playing for the Giants, and a woman shared her story of abuse. And Danielle, this was maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years after she had told me, she turned to me and said, I think I want to share my story, because this story impacted her so much and like helped her so much. And so, when we talk about a platform that is provided, through football or through the NFL or whatever it is, we have decided, we travel around and we speak to young men and young women about healthy relationships, and we do it together, which is so cool. And, she shares her story and I tell my story, and this idea of healthy manhood is, a lot of people want right now want to say, like, let's get rid of toxic manhood. Like, don't put that on people. Like, let's improve healthy manhood, right? Because like, when you think about toxicity, like it's already this negative connotation, but inside every man, like there's some healthy piece that can be nurtured. And so, as we travel around and we talk to these kids, these young boys and young girls about like expectations in relationships, they might not have had parents who were loving, and so they don't even know what a loving relationship looks like. Expectations and treating each other, appropriately, and balancing power in relationships. And I think what we've found is that we are able to not only help the lives of these kids, but also through our stories and through our testimonies, also lead them to Christ in this way that is subtle, right? It's not like an in-your-face way. Paul didn't go, around being like, all you guys are wrong in everything you do, and Jesus is the way. It's like, all right, like, hey, I know all the Jewish traditions. Like, let me sit here and do these with you. Oh yeah, and also here's a way that might help improve this thing. It's called Jesus Christ, right? So, I think we're trying to help through our testimony, and I think it's been really cool and really impactful. And so, when I think about my life and where I am in my faith journey, there's no way I would be even close without Danielle. And I think that the Bible obviously calls for men to lead the family in their faith, and be the head of the household and everything. And like, admittedly, she was farther along in her faith than I was, in the beginning. And I mean, she led me, and there were times where I led her. But like, we both like try to pour into each other, and sometimes it hurts, because sometimes leading someone in their faith is like calling out their crap, right?
Yeah.
Like, in a healthy way, but like calling it, so like that happens. But I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about just how important my wife has been in this journey, much more so than anyone else.
As we wind down, Mark, 2020 has been such a weird year, and it's not finished yet. We still got an election season that's rampant and seems more divisive than ever. We've had obviously the pandemic and quarantine life and all that, but I know for you, 2020, just kind of watching you guys through your social media, there's a battle there that your sister-in-law went through, your wife's sister as
Mhm.
well. So I'm just curious from that perspective, what this view of 2020 has been like, because we see so much negativity, but there's actually a lot of really good things, I think, that have come out of this, and you have an experience there. Can you share a little bit?
Yeah, well, so it just reminds me of you. So when I was going through my cancer treatments, I was in the middle of like my chemo journey, and a reporter asked me, "What's the silver lining in all this?" And I was like, "What do you? There's no silver lining in all this. Like, I'm getting my body pumped full of chemicals every single day. Like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
Like, how dare you ask what the silver lining is in all this?" And like, I feel like right now, our country, our world, kind of like feels like they're in a chemo chip. Like, it can't get like, you feel like it can't get worse, and it gets worse, and then you feel like people couldn't be treated any worse, and then they get treated worse, and yeah, then you think like, oh, maybe there's a little hope, and then there's no hope. So I mean, I think that right now, as we look at it and we try to think about like the good things, it almost seems selfish to point out the good things, but I think that's when Christ comes in, and you read your Bible and you said, be joyous for the good things that we do have. Like, shout praise on the mountaintops. And these are happening, when people are like, you're reading these Old Testament stories, and like they're enslaved, but like not just like enslaved, like the worst stuff could be happening to them ever. And it's like, still sing praises for the things that we do have. So
Yeah.
like right now, so you asked about my sister-in-law. She got pregnant. It would, great. They've been praying for a baby, and they got pregnant. The pregnancy just like took so many bumpy turns. At points where thought maybe they'd lose the baby. And like I remember I was calling a James Madison game, and we just met with the coaches. I like step outside because I say, yeah, sorry, I got to take this phone call. And my wife and I get on with our sister-in-law and her husband. Just like we prayed for just like 10 minutes so hard, like, God, put your healing hands on this baby. Put your healing hands on the baby. And the doctor's like, I don't know how this got better, but it did get better, and it made it through that speed bump. And then she got this like crazy thing happened to her, and her life was threatened. And like, this is the other part about this community of, PAO, but also like Christian athletes and their wives. Like, all we had to do was like shoot out a text to our friends. And it was like, it seemed like everybody who we'd ever seen at PAO or anywhere was praying for her. And like, it was amazing. And so, thank God, but she got healthy again. She was hospitalized for a month, almost on life support. The baby was, still too young to be delivered. God got them through that. They got through it. They had a baby that was, I think, 6 weeks early. Only had to be in the NICU for a day, and then was able to go home with mom. She has a beautiful daughter named Maisie now, and my niece, and I think like there are miracles in this time as well. And so, yeah, no, I think there'll be a lot of silver linings as we look back when we're, it's, I don't know, 2025. Hopefully it's over by then, right? But like, you look back
Yeah.
and you're like, man, gosh, you know what? I really didn't understand race relations before 2020. Now, not only do I understand it, but I'm actively helping my community. Now I'm doing, man, I really didn't understand like that this illness could be so bad for different people. Man, now I'm volunteering at these local hospitals. Man, I didn't really have faith until this tragic thing happened to me in 2020. And now I volunteer at the church. Like, I think those things will happen. And right now, even when someone says, how you doing? Like, it's almost like you don't want to say the good things that are going on, because you just know so many people are hurting so bad. But I remind myself all the time to make sure I at least tell myself and tell my son and tell my wife all the good things that I see during the day, because God still is working miracles.
It's a great way to close here. Mark Herzlich, Super Bowl champion, 7 years with the Giants, and had a great career in college with Boston College, and certainly an inspiration overcoming cancer. You're cancer-free now, right? I asked that, and really, I didn't ask that earlier, and I just assumed you were, but the health is good, right?
Health is good. So I am, 11 years cancer-free now, and so I'm great. I don't have to go back and see the doctor anymore, and just I'm back on my own reconnaissance and doing well.
That's great. Mark, thanks for joining us, man. This has been great. Really appreciate the time and appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me on. I love this show, and I love hearing everybody's stories, so I'm glad to be able to add to it.
And many thanks to Mark Herzlich, the former Super Bowl champion NFL linebacker, for joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. Wasn't that encouraging? I mean, I love that this guy recognizes the platform that he has, recognize who's given him that platform in his faith in Jesus, and just wants to impact others and make the world a better place. And I know he encouraged me. I hope by you listening to this that he encouraged you as well. You can reach him on Instagram. Check him out at Mark Herzlich. That's just his name right there on Instagram. Give him a follow, and then send him a note or a comment or a message and let him know that you heard his story here on Sports Spectrum. I know that he'd appreciate it, and it would be great for you to let him know that his story encouraged you, because it's encouraged so many others who've heard his journey along the way. I'm so grateful for Mark, thankful for his time. And as I mentioned, next time, we have him back on. We should have on his wife, Danielle, too, and tell their story together. And hopefully next year we'll be able to do that. So we appreciate Mark. We also appreciate our partners and sponsors today, Ronald Blue Trust. Check them out at ronblue.com for all your financial questions and concerns. Check them out at ronblue.com. You can also check out our website, sportspectrum.com. That's where all of our content can be found. You have a website that has a daily devotional every day to start your day right with Jesus. You got a podcast page where you can hear all of our podcasts on the Sports Spectrum Podcast Network, which is not just this show, but it's also our Table 40 show with Matt and Leslie Holliday. Matt Holliday, the former Major League Baseball All-Star and World Series champion. Him and his wife, Leslie, are doing a podcast called Table 40, and it's really good. It's part of Sports Spectrum's new podcast network, and you can check it out over at sportspectrum.com. And then, of course, there's articles on our website all day long telling the stories of athletes and other people in the world of sports intersecting with their faith in Jesus Christ. SportsSpectrum.com. Thanks again for listening to today's episode. We love you guys, and we'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum. My name is Jason Romano, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.